Hi, Ted Porter at the Beemershop, doing a bunch of head work, as we always are, and I ran across three problems in a row that I just wanted to video and make sure people got a good look at. These are problems caused by poorly done head work. Usually it's done at machine shops, automotive machine shops where they don't specialize in BMW motorcycles. Also, sometimes it's inferior products or parts that you're being sold, and I have some examples of that also. So let's get right to it. The first problem that we see commonly is particularly on the intake valve seat, because the automotive machine shops typically don't have the right size stones or cutters, and they're not going to make a cutter or purchase a cutter specifically for a BMW motorcycle. So instead, they use a cutter that's too big. And if you can see here, that cutter cut into the combustion chamber here. This is not valve seat. This is the actual combustion chamber. So number one, the problem with this is that I'm probably going to have to replace this intake seat, even though normally we don't have to, because they improperly ground the inner angle so significantly, and I don't know how well that's coming out in the video, but this area is, you can see that this area has really been ground. This is the inside angle. When you're grinding the multiple angles, this is the inside angle. And when you grind this much material away like they did here, it pushes the sealing surface way to the outside. And if you can see on the old valve, it has a very thin sealing area, and it's all the way out on the edge of the valve. And in fact, when I try and get it to seat on my new valve, I can only get, if you can see that gray area there, I can only get it to seat on the very far edge of the valve. This should be more centered. And this valve is not going to seal very well. And it's really difficult to correct that. You can't put this material back that's been taken away. This should never have been ground this much. I don't know what the heck they were thinking, or if I don't understand, I just don't understand it. And then the other problem is when I replace this seat, because they ground this material away right here, which is part of the combustion chamber, because they didn't have the right size cutter, now the seat's going to stick up proud. The correct height for this seat is going to be higher than the combustion chamber. So we can probably work with this, but essentially they've kind of ruined the head. And like I said, normally I don't have to replace intake seats anyway. But because this was so poorly done, I'm probably going to have to replace this intake seat. The next thing that we see is not a matter of workmanship. Well, I guess you could say it is a matter of workmanship, but it's really more about products. This is a standard BMW exhaust valve and stock BMW keepers. These keepers are designed to meet each other. You'll see there's no gap in here. There's no gap between these two halves. They meet each other. And even though I can grip this as hard as I want, this valve is free to spin. Okay, this is called a rotating valve. And the idea is that every time it opens and closes, it spins a little bit. And when it closes, it's able to sort of crush and eliminate carbon, and that keeps the area clean and allows for good heat dissipation. This valve is two pieces. It is a steel. They use steel here because that way it can be through hardened, the keeper slots are hard, and the tip is very hard where the rocker arm smacks it, and the stem can be hard chromed. Then they use a different material for the combustion chamber. It's a stainless alloy for the combustion chamber, and these two are inertia welded together. There's a joint here. And so we're using the best materials for each environment. And the keeper slots hold up because of the hardened keeper slots. This is a very inexpensive valve. The dealer cost on this valve, folks, at the time of this video, would you believe, is $9. I had a sample sent to me recently. They want me to buy their valves. Well, guess what? This is all one-piece stainless, okay? So you can't through harden this. And the keeper slots are so weak that what you have to do to prevent the keeper slots from failing is you have to belt sand the keeper halves so they no longer touch each other. I hope that's coming out on the camera. There's a gap there. Okay. Now this customer did not know that his keepers had been ground like this. And now the keepers actually grip the valve, and it will not turn, it will not spin. This is no longer a rotating valve. And that's the only way that these keeper slots will survive, because this is a very cheaply made one-piece stainless valve. And if you allow it to spin, it will destroy the keeper slots. And I actually have another valve with really bad keeper slots. The valve was about to fail. So you can, if you have head work done, you think people are using stainless valves, you can look to see if there's a gap in here. This gap means that somebody has ground your keepers and the valve no longer rotates. And when the valve no longer rotates, we see really bizarre wear here. There's some really deep ridges in here. I don't know how well that comes out on camera, but this valve was not sealing well at all. So there's a lot of incentive to sell this valve because there's a lot of profit margin in it. In my opinion, the two-piece valve is the correct valve, at least for street use where you want durability. The last thing I want to show you is another cylinder head that went to an automotive machine shop, and I don't think I can do anything with this head. I think we're going to have to condemn this head. A couple things happened here. Number one, extremely large valve seat for this application. This is just a 750, and the reason that the automotive machine shop put such a large OD valve seat in here is because this is a standard 1 3/4 inch seat. It's something that they're likely to have in stock. So they just bore the heck out of your head and fit this huge seat. What the problem with this is we're not going to be able to do much more in the future because there's so much material that's been removed here. And this is a common seat that we have made. Now our valve seats are made specifically for BMW heads. We don't do anything other than BMW heads, unlike the automotive machine shops. And this is the oversized seat that we would have installed. And I don't know if you can see how much smaller the OD is on this seat. You can see all that material that they removed from the cylinder head unnecessarily, and that prevents future valve seat replacements because we're just going to run out of material. Because the seat pocket needs to be bored round before the new seat is installed. So that's problem number one, but problem number two gets even worse. Normally when we replace valve guides, we don't need to use an oversized oversized guide. When we remove the valve guide, we remove it in such a way that there's no damage to the bore in the head. And we can 99.9% of the time go back in with a standard guide. There's really no reason to have to put oversized guides in, generally speaking. For whatever reason, whoever installed this guide pounded in an enormous guide. This is, I forget how many, this is like 3 or 4 oversizes. And obviously they didn't fit it correctly because I hope this can come out with the camera. There are cracks in the head. There's a crack here and another crack over here. So obviously when the guide didn't fit, they just got the bigger hammer and kept pounding away. And when you do that, not only do you risk damage to the head, like this occurred, but also the eccentricity, the center line of the valve guide to the seat becomes very eccentric. And I don't know if you can see that. Some of these details might be hard to see, but when they did this and then they ground the seat, they had to remove a lot of material on this side and hardly any material on this side because the bore now is kicked off to one side of the seat. It's not nearly concentric anymore. So it would be very difficult to repair this with the cracks, plus the fact that it's a maximum oversized guide, plus the fact that the bore is no longer concentric to the seat pocket. So they've really kind of ruined this head. So these are some of the risks when you send your cylinder head to a local automotive machine shop. And on one of these, I forget which one, the guy said, well, I don't understand because that's where all the airheads in the area send their heads. Well, that could be. But it could also be that all the airheads in the community where they're sending their heads there are getting work like this done. These cheap valves, the keepers being ground so that you no longer have a rotating valve, improper valve seats, poor guide fitment, cutters that are not the right size for BMW motorcycles where the combustion chamber is getting damaged. This is the kind of stuff that we see, and we encourage people to, you don't just have to send it to us, but send it to somebody who specializes in BMW motorcycle heads that are going to be using quality parts, correct size valve seats, correct size cutters so your cylinder heads aren't damaged. Thanks for watching the video. Keep the Beemershop in mind for all your airhead parts and service.